The warm vertical compaction or the warm Gata-Pacha technique was introduced by Schilder in 1967. Basically, in this technique, Gata-Pacha is softened by heat and vertically compacted into the canal. If obturation is to be done by this technique, there are certain rules or requirements of how the root canals should be. These are called as Schilder's objectives. A continuous tapering funnel should be present from the root canal orifice to the root apex. Warm Gata-Pacha is going to flow in this canal, so it's good to have a funnel shape like this. The root canal should be prepared so that it flows with the shape of the original canal. The shape of the apical foramen should not be changed or moved. The apical foramen should be kept as small as possible. What will happen if it is large? Excess Gata-Pacha will be forced through it during vertical compaction. So overfilling will occur. This technique is indicated as an alternative to cold technique. When there is perforation, ledge formation or unusual canal curvature, internal resorption or large lateral canals, fitting our regular master cone in the apical portion is not possible. In this case, warm compaction is indicated. Now, which instruments do we need for this technique? Let's see. We need instruments called as compactors or pluggers. So these are hand pluggers. They are double-ended and they have serrations at 5 mm intervals. So we can check the working depth. So one end is smaller and made with nickel titanium, so it is more flexible, and the other end is made with stainless steel, so it is more rigid. These pluggers have to be pre-fitted in the canal. What does it mean? It means we have to determine the depth to which they can be inserted in the canal without touching the dentin walls. Why? Because in this technique we are going to compact the GP vertically, right? So we need maximum cushion of the softened Gata-Pacha and compact it vertically. We don't want to go laterally because it can cause root damage by the wedging action of the plugger. So we start with a sufficiently wide plugger that goes in the coronal 1/3 of the canal, and just before the instrument touches the dentin walls, we adjust the stopper accordingly. Next, we will go on to smaller sizes. So the second plugger is now selected that goes into the middle 1/3 of the canal, again adjusting its rubber stop. Finally, a third plugger is selected which is narrower and which descends into the apical third, and it is advanced to a point which is 5 mm from the apical foramen. So this was about pluggers. The other instrument we need here is heat carrier. This is used to deliver heat to the GP cone in the root canal. These instruments are provided with tips of different diameters and different tapers. Now the GP cones used for this technique are tapered, means they are more conical. So they give us larger amount of Gata-Pacha on which we can apply vertical force with the pluggers. So we use non-standardized or greater taper Gata-Pacha cones, and the size is selected based on the last instrument used in the canal. The canal wall is coated with a thin layer of root canal sealer. The master cone is inserted up to the working length, and the coronal end of the cone is cut off with a heated instrument. Next, we are going to use the wider pre-fitted plugger to start the vertical compaction. Means vertical pressure is applied on the heated GP with the plugger. Then the heat carrier is introduced for 3 to 4 mm into the Gata-Pacha without touching the dentin walls. It is kept there only for a fraction of a second, and the heating element is turned off and it is removed from the canal. As it is removed, some amount of GP is removed with it because the heat carrier heats the Gata-Pacha which is apical to its tip and removes surrounding Gata-Pacha, as you can see here. So in this way, the level of next compaction will be more apical. Next, the pre-fitted plugger is introduced again to compact and push the GP apically. The same process is repeated, that is, the heat carrier is introduced into the canal to a depth of 3 to 4 mm, and again it is removed and the pre-fitted plugger is inserted. So this goes on until the smallest plugger compacts the material at about 5 millimeters from the apical foramen. Remember, we had selected the smallest plugger and we had adjusted its stopper so that the tip will be 5 mm from the apical foramen. So that's the plugger that we are using here. Now reverse packing or back packing starts. Once the gutta-percha has been compacted to about 5 to 6 mm from the apical foramen, a radiograph should be taken to see if the obturation has been done properly. Then the middle and coronal thirds are filled. This can be done in two ways. First is adding small pieces of gutta-percha and heating and compacting them. Second method is using thermoplastic gutta-percha. In anterior teeth, it is important to limit the backfilling of the gutta-percha to at least 2 mm from the gingival margin. This is to prevent discoloration. But in multi-rooted teeth, complete backpacking and obturation of the canals and pulp chamber should be done because of the presence of accessory canals on the floor of the pulp chamber. They have to be sealed, otherwise there is a possibility of inflammation in the furcation area. Advantages with this technique are that we get an excellent seal of the canal apically and laterally, and the lateral and accessory canals are also obturated. Disadvantage is the amount of time it takes, and there is a risk of vertical root fracture. Also, the overfilled gutta-percha cannot be retrieved from the periradicular tissues.